Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. And it's David Gouthro back here for yet another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. And today I'm here with Herky Cutler. So welcome, Herky.
Thank you, David. It's great to be with you.
You know, I was just thinking, I haven't seen you for many, many years. And I didn't realize you look actually much younger than you are, which I think is a testament to the many different things that you do in your life.
And the drugs really help.
And drugs really help. And we had just started just before this. You were talking about how you actually went back into the classroom as someone who's a guest teacher, I believe is the term that they use in Alberta.
That's correct. I did.
And you were curious about what it was going to be like for someone of your age. I believe it's okay to mention it because you told me, which is 71, and that makes you, I believe it's a septuagenarian. And so what was that experience like going back into the classroom? And it's not even your classroom. You moved around to a bunch of different ones. What's that experience been like for you?
Well, it's been, there was some fear. There was definitely some trepidation because I wasn't sure how I was going to be. Like I've always worked with kids, so I didn't think that was going to be an issue. But there's a system in a school that has always been an issue for me. That structure, that having to follow policy and procedure, that, saying the right thing or the wrong thing and all of that stuff. And now here I am as the new guy on the block. And I was just wondering, how would kids respond to me in this way at this age, at this time? So I thought, this is a challenge. I like taking risks. I like doing something that's a little different. And I thought, why not give it a shot? So I did. And I would say after the first day, it definitely got a hell of a lot easier. Although I go to different schools and different grade levels, and some of the stuff I can't teach, David. Like even at the junior high, I was doing grade 8 math, and a kid asked me a question. I said, I cannot help you. I cannot help you. I'm sorry about that, but your teacher will be back tomorrow. And that's kind of weird because, that's kind of what you're there for, is you're supposed to be helping. But there's such a shortage of teachers that they can't find exact subject teachers to match teachers who are away. So that's a bit of an issue.
Let me ask you a number of questions. And first
just
of all,
one at a time, though.
Oh yeah, they're lined up in my brain. So if they come too fast, just say, okay, let's go back to number 17 for just a moment. So I'm curious, what prompted you to go back? So had you worked in the school system before, Herky? And if so, in what capacity?
Oh, many kinds of capacities. I worked as a teacher, so I became a teacher. I worked as a high school guidance counselor. But prior to my education degree, because I was a terrible student myself, I hated high school, actually. And that's why I became a teacher eventually, because I thought I could do better than my teachers did. So I worked with a lot of at-risk youth prior to going back to university when I was an adult. And then I took education, became a teacher. And when I started teaching, they knew I had all this experience working with at-risk kids. So I never really taught like a regular classroom. I was always the alternative education guy working with the kids who had behavior issues, which I love. So that's kind of what I did. And then I became a guidance counselor because I had all this background working with at-risk youth and counseling them. And then I left kind of the teaching part of it, but I got a contract with the Alberta government to do career development stuff in an entire school division. So I was working in 11 schools for 9 years doing this career development stuff. So schools have always been a part of what I do. And that's what made me want to go back, is what are they like now? Because it's been about, I would say, 12 years since I've been actually teaching in a school.
Okay. And just, because I don't know who our listeners are and what their experience is in the school system. But when you go into a school like that, do you have a a lesson plan or something to work from? Or does it vary from teacher to teacher, where they just throw you into the wolves? Or what's the variability of your experience coming in as a guest
It's
teacher?
it's still new. It's only a month and a half, but yeah, some teachers have great lesson plans, well thought out, well laid out, and some have 10 words, and some have nothing.
So having to be quick on your feet would definitely be something that would be important doing that. And that's interesting coming back after 12 years. Now, you had mentioned when we were speaking just before we started that there was one, I believe you said a junior high school, where you actually had the opportunity to be with the kids for 4 days. So they got to know you a little bit and you got to know them. So what were some of those experiences that you had with them?
Well, that was great because as I got to know some of the names, um, and I'm drawn because of my background working with at-risk youth, I am actually drawn to the kids in the classroom that I could pick them out very easily. So, the kid sitting in the back of the room with his head on the desk and not doing any work, and you can tell that there's something going on for that kid. So it gave me an opportunity, as the other kids were working on what the teacher left them to work on, I'd go to that kid and I'd pull a chair next to him and said, how you doing, John? Because now I knew his name. And we'd have a conversation. And that is where the magic happens, I think, in any classroom. And that's what I really like the most, just to just listen to what those kids are doing and going through in their life. It's pretty special.
But it's a little bit different now than 12 years ago in terms of, so what we have in our hands, these things called smartphones that sometimes make us dumb. But how did the availability of smartphones influence your experience?
Well, every school has their own kind of policy around smartphones. When I was teaching or even when I'm training, I use the phone as a tool. So if I'm training, and I'm training on a particular topic, I'll get the participants to do some research on their phone about the particular aspect of what we're talking about. So they actually use them with permission. And when you're using something with permission, it's not a game anymore. Like, can I sneak my phone out here and use it? So with the kids in school, I ask what the rule is. It's the very first thing I ask when I walk into a new classroom. What are your rules here? What should I know? And they either tell me the truth or they don't tell me the truth. And sometimes I won't know. And I don't care. But the fact that I've asked them isn't as an important deal because, he wants to know. And we could be the teacher now and teach this guy something. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, some of them abuse it, and I have to kind of walk by them, and I'm a pretty big guy, so when I'm walking by a little grade 8 kid's desk, they look up and they know what I'm there for, and they hopefully put the phone away.
So you're making me pull this out of you, Herky, and I'm prepared to do that. You talked about a particularly special experience with, I believe you said, with the junior high school, where they actually did something as radical as Googling you.
Oh, that's why you brought up the phone. Yes.
Work with me.
I'll try. I guess it was my third day there. So they got to know me a little bit. Now maybe they're curious. And so they Googled me and they found out that I did a lot of different things professionally, and they also found out that I was a musician, and that, of course, is always pretty interesting for young people, I think. And so I guess they wanted to see, well, what does he sound like? And, my music is all over the net, and so they found some songs, they started playing them, and they liked them, which is kind of cool. And a couple days later, the last time I was at that school, the first thing they said in this class when I walked in was, can you play us Love is Like a Chicken, which is one of my songs. So I thought that was pretty neat that a grade 8 kid would ask me that.
I just have a huge smile on my face that those who are listening won't be able to see, but I just think that's such a fabulous experience and a connection and a relationship that's so important because, I imagine at least some of the things that I heard on the radio today, they were talking about education across the country. There's no time to establish a relationship or a connection. And it's really hard to make a meaningful difference with at least in my belief, without a relationship. I just think that's fantastic.
So, first of all, I totally agree with you that the relationship is what it's all about in any helping profession, I would say. And I totally disagree that there isn't time to develop to do that. I can establish a relationship with someone in a minute.
I guess what I should have said is a lot of people don't because they figure they can't. And you're saying, well, actually, you can in a minute. So how would you go about doing that?
Well, it's how you show up in life. I mean, haven't you? Haven't you? People have met you and probably felt that way about you. Like this is a man I could talk to, or seems interesting, or whatever. And there's the beginning of the relationship. It's showing up with an open heart, with being vulnerable and just being a human being, and showing respect for where you are and who these people are, and that in itself will help you develop a relationship with anyone.
As you say, it doesn't take long, and that initial contact can either make things better or worse very quickly, and it takes a while to recover from a bad start, right?
Oh, that it's all that notion. I think it was Stephen Covey who talked about trust, and how it could take 20 years to build up trust, and it could take a minute to completely destroy it.
Yep. And we've seen a lot of that these days, not just in the teaching profession, but many other places. So these students, what else would they have found when they searched on you?
I hid the bad stuff. I got rid of that. I learned how to do that long ago. Well, they went to my website, so they know that I'm a speaker and a trainer and an author. They looked at my book and, all kinds of stuff that they found. So it was pretty cool.
So tell
Pictures of me with kids and all that stuff. It was great.
So tell me about your book. What's your book about?
It's a book about leadership. I wrote that in 2000 and, oh my God, 16 maybe, something like that. It's called Get Fit, and FIT is an acronym, FIT. Go far, 15 things leaders absolutely must do to improve organizations, or something like that.
And so, not to put you on the spot, but I will. When you think of you wrote that 8 years ago, and if you're looking at the state of leadership today, and we won't go south of the border, let's just stay in Canada and let's just stay in organizations. What are some of your observations? Either good or bad. How have things changed in the last 8 years, and if so, how?
Well, I don't know if things have changed necessarily. I still see the same issues in leadership that I saw back then that I think I've seen my whole life. I'm assuming, and I'm not assuming. I mean, I listen to people talk. I go to conferences. I read books, and it does seem to be a movement towards more, I'll call it heart-based leadership, or compassionate leadership, or, leadership that isn't top-down. And I'm very thankful for that, because I think that's what we need more of in the world. When you look at the world and you look at our world leaders, my God, I think we're going backwards. I think we're going back to the dark ages, because it's just disgusting as far as I'm concerned. So what is going on? Why do we have leadership that is constantly, they're constantly bickering. It's always a fight. There's never two parties who actually support each other and work together for a country. It's one party thinks they've got the right way, and the other party thinks they've got the right way. And then we just fight and see which one gets into power. So they are our role models. So watch a Canadian question period. I'm sure you have. The most ridiculous thing I've ever seen is that. Those are our leaders.
I was listening to a fellow today, I believe he's at U of T, and what he's trying to do, if I understood this correctly, was try to get some of the students to be able to have more civil discourse. And in particular, with what's going on in Israel and Gaza, where people come in where they're just, ready to be at blows, and they don't necessarily need to agree with each other, but it would be helpful to have a broader understanding of what's going on by listening. And there was an author here, I wish I could remember his name, but he wrote a book called I'm Right and You're an Idiot. And that was again about the state of civil discourse in our society today. To be able to differ but not have to fight over resolving those differences. And wow, do we ever need that today? My gosh.
We really do. And of course, social media, has not done us well in that regard. It just seems to be an opportunity for people to say whatever the heck they want to say, because there's not a lot of fear of retribution because people don't know who they are. So it's a real issue.
So I'm going to go in a bit of a different direction, because I never actually knew that you were a teacher. I've only known you as a performer and performing in different places. So could you tell us a little bit more about your performance? And I know it wasn't the chicken dance, but it was something that had something to do with the chicken. That was a request. But what's the nature of your performance? And do you use that in your work beyond simply performing?
Yeah, I do. So the performance actually emerged, David, because of a high school student. So I was a guidance counselor in a high school in Calgary called the Alternative High School. It's still actually there. And the school did 2 fundraisers a year. And the fundraisers were talent shows. These were kids who could not make it in the Calgary public system because they were bored to tears. And most of them were artistic and musical and actually way smarter than most of the kids you would meet in a regular school. Anyway, this one kid, he saw that I had a guitar in my office, but I never played it. At that point, I had never played it guitar in front of anybody except my wife. And he said, "So Herky," we called each other by our first name in the school. He said, "So Herky, you're going to be in the talent show, right?" And I went, "No." And he said, "Well, what do you mean? Like, what if I played with you?" Now, this was a 16-year-old kid named Carl, and he was an incredible guitar player. Now, here's a guidance counselor of the high school whose student is coming to him and saying, "I will help you, Mr. Cutler." How can you say no to that? So I said, "Okay." So we did it. There were 300 people in the audience. We played 3 songs. We got a standing ovation, and he changed my life because that was the moment I started to perform in front of audiences and never stopped. So that was pretty cool. And the really cool part about that story is 25 years later, I found him on Facebook, and I was able to thank him for what he had done.
My gosh, that must have been amazing, that connection.
It was.
Wow.
He was tickled pink. So that performing was great. I loved the feedback from the audience. And at that point, I wasn't writing any songs. And then I moved to Pincher Creek in southern Alberta, and I started working at a high school. I was doing some substitute teaching, and I had my private counseling practice as well. And I met a couple of teachers who were musicians, and we started jamming together, the 3 of us, and we ended up forming a band. And so the performance took on a different light, and that was my one and only band I've ever been in my life. We spent about 7 years together. And while we're together as a band, I started to write songs. And we would do some of the original songs, but mostly it was cover tunes in a bar kind of a thing. And then I finally said, I think I want to do this on my own. I really want to play more of my own music. And they each had young families, and I didn't have a family. So we just said, let's just call it a day and thank each other for the great music. So that's when I went out on my own as a solo performer, doing my own songs. And so the performance changed to coffee shops and folk clubs and house parties and things like that. And that was really a lot of fun. And I've been doing that ever since. But then I brought back the bar scene. So I can still go into a bar and I play about 300 cover tunes.
Wow.
And I can do the mix now of, just bar stuff and personal stuff. And it's just a really fantastic hobby. I love it.
That's incredible. And that's got to be good for you, for your memory, to be able to know that many songs. Like
I cheat, David. I have a tablet. I can't remember all of it. I can't remember my own songs for crying out loud.
Well, and you know what? I find that sometimes we end up comparing ourselves to other people that do seem to be able to to do that. Like my daughter's 24, she's turning 24 February 29th. And she hears the song once and she can sing it. And like I am just I can't even imagine that. And in fact, I was at a show the other night at the Playhouse, and it was they called it I think it was like a love play or something like that, but it was with David Suzuki and his wife, who are both two incredibly amazing people, and two younger people. And David Suzuki said, "You know, I can't memorize this stuff. Is it okay if I use my script?" And everyone said, "Of course." Like, why do I set her? Why do we set ourselves up for failure about what other people are going to think if we have to read something because we can't memorize it? That's one of the reasons that I prefer facilitation to keynote speaking and things like that, because I can't remember all those kinds of things. As a facilitator, I don't have to. I could just ask questions like this and absolutely love it.
Oh, that's great.
But Herky, you have like you just have an incredible amount of energy. You seem super healthy and things like that. So, and I'll just go with that hypothesis. And so what are some of the other things that what are some of the things that fascinate you these days that you go, wow, I'd like to know a little bit more about that, just out of curiosity.
Well, since 2009 now, I've been a part of a men's organization called Mentor, Discover, Inspire, or MDI. And I've taken a number of leadership roles in that organization. In fact, right now I'm the division coordinator for the Head Smashed In division, which is the Calgary-based group. And there's 58 men in the division. And so what fascinates me is a number of things about this. How men are, how men want to be, and why there's only 600 men in this organization internationally when there should be 6 million men. Because what this organization has done for me and so many of the men that I know has been absolutely remarkable. So that's fascinating. Another thing that fascinates me is I just went to a conference in California, a business conference, Business by Design. James Wedmore, don't know if you're familiar with him, for digital entrepreneurs, because a lot of my business is online now. So there were 1,000 of us in California, David, doing this intense 3.5-day conference. And David's wife did a meditation with us. And the meditation was designed to get us to try and bend a spoon with our mind. I don't know if you've ever seen this or have experienced this.
Uri Geller, that used to be one of those things that he'd do on TV. Yeah.
Yes. And if you're a fan of The Matrix, there was a piece in The Matrix about that she actually started the meditation off with, showed this video clip. So this is a bit of a longer story than you probably wanted. But anyway, we're doing this meditation where she tells us how to hold a spoon and turns the lights down. My eyes are closed and I can't bend the spoon. The voice in my head is saying, what a loser. You can't bend the spoon. There's probably 900 people who are bending a spoon and you can't. What's the matter with you? And that, of course, was what stopped me from bending the spoon. So, we open our eyes after the meditation and you look around and lots of people have bent their spoons in weird kind of ways. Other people have not bent their spoon. And then she does a little bit of debrief for those who didn't bend the spoon. And she said, remember the video that I showed you from The Matrix where the little monk boy tells Keanu Reeves, it's not about the spoon, it's about you. So it was like, what do I need to change in order to be able to bend the spoon? So fast forward 2 days, conference is over. I'm in my hotel room, 6:30 in the morning. I bolt out of bed, literally, and I run to my computer bag where the unbent spoon is. And I put it in my hand the way she taught us. I put myself into my own meditation. The voice comes back. I push the voice aside. And what replaces the voice is this overwhelming sense of love. Love for all the people in my life who have helped me. Love for all the people that I've tried to help. Love for all the people who do good things in the world. And I just started to cry and cry and cry. And as I was doing that, I completely forgot about what my task was. Guess what happened? I bent the spoon. fast forward again. So the reason I started this story is what I'm fascinated about. So a man sees me tell the story of the spoon in my newsletter. He's on my email list. And he calls me up. He's from Calgary. He says, Herky, this is amazing. Like, I belong to a mastermind group. Would you come and talk to the group about what you did? And I said, and he said, I'll buy you dinner. I said, well, yes. If you're buying, I'm in. So I go to Calgary, 15 men at this private club. I tell the story, even though he had sent them a copy of it. I tell the story again. I bring the spoon with me. I pass the spoon around. Everybody gets to see it. And then the host, Steve, asks everybody, well, what do you think? What's your impression? Most people thought, yeah, like, this is really cool. I can see that happening. This one man, David, he conducts symphony orchestras and composes music, which I found really fascinating. All these men were very wealthy and very well off and doing weird things. And he says, there's absolutely no way this is possible. It just can't happen. So here's the fascinating part. He is talking to a man who experienced this, tells him the story, shows him the spoon, which you cannot bend in the way it looks. If you bent it, it would be a very angular bend. This was a round bend like this, and it was stainless steel. It's clearly, I couldn't have done it by force. And there were two men in that group who actually knew me from Rotary. And one man said, he piped up, he says, I've known Herky for like 15 years. I don't think he would come and lie about something like this. That's just not him. So what's fascinating about that, David, is that man would not change his position, even though the evidence was right there in front of him. And that goes back to your question about leadership. Why do people hold these positions and refuse to move off them, even though everything around them is telling them that it's not the right way to be?
We're pretty strongly attached to our beliefs. It's like there's these little clothes pegs that are actually more than clothes pegs that keep our beliefs attached to us and keep us from learning and keep us from growing.
I think they're anchors.
Yeah.
More than clothes pegs.
Yeah, that's true. That's more the scale. Yeah, and it's really too bad. And so when people say that, I wonder, so what would it take to convince you? And if they say nothing, you can't persuade anyone, which is really unfortunate because he's the one that loses.
Yeah, I think so. I just find that fascinating. You asked me that question, and that's just boggles my mind.
So I realize this, I may get into trouble for asking this question, but you're with this group, I think you said of 600 men, right? And one of the things I wonder is what are some myths that people hold about men, either men or women, something that you've discovered to be true working with this group of 600 men, things that have surprised you either pleasantly or I don't know what else it would be if it wasn't pleasantly, but where you just kind of go, that is so cool. I wouldn't have thought there were that many people that felt that way. Anything come to mind around that? I know I'm putting you on the spot again.
No, that's totally okay. So, as a man, and I think this is probably true for every human being, but as a man, I wear all kinds of masks. And because of my upbringing as a man in a Western middle class society, there has been certain, I believe, expectations of me as that man. And sometimes those expectations don't jive with what I believe or how I feel or whatever. And yet, because I'm interacting with people socially, professionally, I continue to wear the mask. There are very few places in my life where I can take the mask off completely. And it was finding this organization where I was able to do that. And so I think one of the myths that might occur is that men don't have the capacity sometimes, or some people might feel that some men don't actually have the capacity to do that and be open, raw, vulnerable, and hurt, emotional, feminine, whatever words, descriptors you want to put on it. And when you're with these men, and my team of men, of 10 men, meet every week. And over time, you get to see these beautiful people, expose themselves to the extent that you really get to know them, who they are really, and all of the things that they have to deal with in their life that cause them to put masks on when they leave the meeting. So that's been a real eye-opener for me. And that's why I can't understand why there isn't 6 million men in this organization, because when I found that, and I didn't have that anywhere else in my life, I wanted that. I needed that in my life.
So perhaps one last question, and that's, is that just a function of the men that happen to be drawn to that, or do they do some things structurally? Like, I think a lot of times, society, has these kind of norms and things like that you're surrounded by, and it's almost like you can't help but align with it. But is there something that's done with that group where there might be some magic to that other people could choose to duplicate or replicate without giving up any secrets? But I don't think things like that happen naturally.
Absolutely. We have all kinds of structure. We have training. We have some really incredible personal development weekends that we take men through with a lot of thought, a lot of effort, and a lot of incredible training and learning. And that happens constantly. And, some of the we call it technology, some of the technology that we have lots of men have come and gone. They're no longer in the organization. So they take whatever they take. So they're probably using a lot of that stuff out in their own personal life. I use it everywhere in my life, both personally and professionally. So, and there are more and more men's organizations cropping up now, as it seems to be something that is more needed, and maybe more men are feeling more comfortable about trying something like this. So for me, I don't care where you go, just go somewhere where you can get that kind of support and be yourself. So yeah, it's wonderful.
So Herky, this has been great. And I hope after this, you can send me some information about this group if it's appropriate, as well as where people can find your music and where you can perform, because I really do appreciate you taking your time to be here with me today. So I have been here with Herky Cutler, taking the conversation in a direction never even imagined when we got started, which is what I love about these. So thank you so much for being with us, Herky.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciated getting to see you again and hang out with you for a bit.
Well, it's been totally mutual. So, David Gouthro, discover fresh perspectives. Hopefully, you've grabbed a few from this conversation and are looking forward to more next time. So, thank you once again, David Gouthro. Discover fresh perspectives. Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.